Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I am not Joe Zolo. I'm better looking and funnier. I'm Josh. You guys know me from our Wednesday, no pun intended show. This is our fourth episode of Club Dynasty, where we look at all of our Dynasty-related questions and based on our first three shows where we've been talking in season. Now that the regular season is over, I've invited a couple people that know college prospects a hell of a lot better than I do. For the third time on our show, Angelo, who runs angeloanalysis.com, excuse me. And in the bottom there, for the first time on our show, Katie Flower, the diva of Devi. How we doing, folks?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on for a third time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm doing great, and I'm glad to be invited. I'm looking forward to this.
Good. Yeah, I've been going through and reading your guys' show notes, and I'm just like, all right, bring in the notepad. Let's get going. I'm going to have to rewatch this episode like 4 times so I can smash on my rookie draft. So really looking forward to this. So before we get into the 2021 class at quarterback, wide receiver, running back, tight end, I want to kind of get your guys' quick thoughts on this year's rookie class, because we have had a lot of big-time performances. We've had the passing touchdown record broken. We've had the rookie receiving record broken. We've had a slew of other running backs that have popped this year. There's so much talent. So, Katie, I want to start with you. Give me the good of this year's 2020 class and the bad of this year's 2020 class to get us started.
Sure. So being in Devi for quite a long time now, almost as long as I have been in Dynasty, I knew that this class 2020 was going to be very strong at running back. Everybody knew it, and it did not disappoint. And I'll let Angelo speak to that. But the wide receiver class was also not as highly touted, but it was looking pretty deep. And guys like Judy and Lamb, they did have good rookie seasons, but we expected as early round picks that they would. What I wanted to just mention, we weren't sure how the others, the guys that looked like they had pretty good metrics, pretty good film, how would they respond on the scene and how would they break out? And I just think that we had so many guys, Jefferson, Higgins, Ayuk, Claypool, they all had very good rookie seasons. Jefferson, arguably one of the best in a long, long time. And then to a certain extent, we also had Michael Pittman, Laviska Shenault, and even Darnell Mooney. Gabriel Davis, another one, Gabriel Davis. So yeah, guys that we weren't sure, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road would start to hit, but they had decent seasons too. So it gives a lot of optimism to the overall depth of the wide receiver class, and not just depth for the future, but for the right now. And then as far as the bad, again, we knew early on that this was going to be a bad tight end class, and classes change quite a bit depending on who declares and who stays back in school. It didn't matter. This class was abysmal. The other day on Under the Helmet, we had our end of the season kind of superlatives, who was the best and who was the worst at each, veteran category. I refused to even answer the question for the incoming rookie tight ends. I said it was so bad. There isn't anybody that I want to say was better than the rest. And it was just abysmal. That was the bad, was the tight end class.
It's funny you say that, because this year's tight end class, which we're going to get to in a bit, is absolute fire. So yeah, this is going to be exciting. So Angelo, give us your good and bad from the 2020 class.
Oh man, I think the good is the running back class lived up to expectations, right? Akers, Swift, Taylor, Edwards, Slayer, and Gibson all have pretty bright futures as primary ball carriers in the NFL. So those are guys you're going to be counting on in your dynasty leagues for the next 3+ years. So that's been a great boon to this class. But the bad, I think we still have question marks on some of the first round receivers. In particular, Jalen Reagor and Jerry Jeudy. I think
me as an Eagles fan, by the way.
I know it's tough. It's tough for Reagor because he got dealt a tough hand from the beginning with the injuries. With all the COVID stuff going on and him getting hurt, right when he got into the thick of things. That kind of set his development back a little bit, I think. I was really high on him coming out. I had him as my wide receiver 2 in this class. And I still think he can live up to that expectation. But the Philadelphia Eagles right now are a mess of an organization for multiple reasons. And then with Jerry Jeudy, I think it's the drops. I mean, I think it was 8 in one game or like 5 in one game.
Yeah, I think it was 5. Yeah.
5?
I've never seen such a case of alligator arms in my life. And I'm the biggest Deante Johnson stan on the planet.
Yeah. I think it was like 8 in a 2 or 3 game stretch, but 5 in one game. Those are, that's pretty alarming. Right. And the thing is, like Deante Johnson, he has all the movement skills. He has the route running capabilities to be an extremely good wide receiver, especially thrive in the slot in the NFL. But it's going to be a combination of his environment. Is Drew Lock good? Like, do we know the answer to that question yet?
I don't think Katie's like, yes, no, he's not good.
We know the answer to that already. The question is, does Denver know it yet?
Exactly, and that's the thing. Is Elway gonna go a different direction and at that position? And we don't know the answer to that yet. And I like what Katie said about the tight ends is, the tight end class has not been good. But the one thing I'll say is the 2 players that I would kind of try to acquire this offseason are Cole Kmet and Adam Troutman. I think Kmet in particular offers a really unique skill set, being a Chicago Bears fan and growing up in Chicago my whole life.
You're biased, so we can dismiss this. Okay,
exactly. I think he's looked the best out of all the tight ends in terms of, yards after catch capabilities, improving as a blocker. But Troutman, I think, had the highest tight end blocking grade of all NFL tight ends, which is surprising as a rookie, right?
Last I checked, though, Angelo, we don't get fantasy points for blocking.
That is correct. But I think that's going to help the New Orleans Saints move on from Jared Cook, right? And not draft another tight end and give Troutman a shot there. And I like Troutman was actually my number 1 tight end coming out. So it's nice to see him kind of get a little bit of notoriety, but you're right.
I'm a Harrison Bryant fan myself.
Are you? Okay.
I love that kid.
I love it.
Yeah, when he went to Cleveland, I was like, oh crap,
that's tough.
And then they signed Austin Hooper, and it was like, why do they need 3 tight ends? They're probably going to move on from Njoku. And Harrison Bryant, he flashed a little bit this year. He got some.
I think he's the future of that position for them.
So I think if Stefanski in that offense, they start targeting the position more, which we saw that towards the end of the year when Hooper got back in there. That I think he could have maybe a decent floor from a fantasy perspective. But again, it's what we're looking for with tight ends is we want as many targets as possible and we want as many touchdowns as possible.
Oh, 100%. I think
if he gets at least one of those, there's opportunity there.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
I think there's some growth there. I'll give mine really quick. Obviously good. Justin Herbert, come on. Like, I don't think any of us really saw that coming, at least in year 1. Breaking the rookie touchdown pass record that Baker set a couple years ago, and not only breaking it, but smashing it. Like, this was just an absolute boom year for offenses in the NFL because nobody could play defense. And the bad, I'm going to kind of echo Jalen Reagor because, I'm an Eagles fan and I'm butthurt, but, it is what it is. I see, we're as obviously we do this live, so we're going to have some questions that will come in. Before we get to the quarterback class of this year.
I wanted to give some feedback, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I wanted to jump in on the Reagor. You guys are piling on. In 2000, well, first of all, who right now is the Dynasty wide receiver 1? If you were to do a startup right now, who's the Dynasty wide receiver 1?
I'll let you go first, Angelo.
Probably Adams.
Okay.
I think
I'm on the same bandwagon.
I think, when you're talking about top 3 at the position, I think you want to go, the safest route in terms of floor. And I think Adams offers the most impressive floor out of everybody. You can make a case for Stephon Diggs. You can make a case for AJ Brown, DK Metcalf.
Make a case for Tyreek Hill.
Metcalf. Yeah.
I think even after this year, you could make a case for Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. It's like 5-6 deep at the positions.
Yeah.
So.
Right. So in 2014, we had a very deep wide receiver class. OBJ was crowned as the wide receiver 1 from that class. Mike Evans has been crowned. Sammy Watkins at one point had been crowned. It took Devonta Adams about 3 seasons before he finally started to dominate, and he hasn't stopped since. Give Jalen Reagor, give Jerry Jeudy some time. Dynasty owners are so quick to release and forget about guys. Give them at least 2 or 3 years. I'm not concerned about Jerry Jeudy's drops. Every rookie has a different acclimation period of how long it takes them before they start to play without thinking. I think he's still overthinking. He's not the fluid Jerry Jeudy he was in Alabama, where everything came natural. It's going to take some time. And he's got a shitty quarterback, let's face it. But the thing with Jalen Reagor, he started off with the injuries. He's got a horrible freaking team.
Yes.
Just in memory of Shane, because I love Shane, and I know he's been on your show. He's a fucking lousy quarterback, and not a lousy quarterback so much as the offensive line and not giving him time. And Jalen Hurts is not a great passer, but he's dynamic runner and a good leader, and the change that they needed at that time. But Carson Wentz is seeing ghosts and has been for a little while now.
Oh, crap. You just compared him to Sam Darnold. That hurts me, man.
I did not. I never
you just said he was seeing ghosts.
As far as that part goes. But my point is, I think that both of those guys will be fine. Don't give up on them. It's been, not all rookies hit in their first, especially at the wide receiver position. And I think that they do have the skill set. I don't think they're busts. It's way too soon to give up on them. It took Devonta Adams 3 years before he's now everybody. Most people that you ask in Dynasty, he is right up there in the talks with the wide receiver one, if not top 3 at the position. It takes some time.
Well, thank you for that affirmation, Katie, because now I'm going to have to go find a new co-host who just said Jalen Reagor's garbage. So, Joe, you're fired. Kidding, Joe. I love you, buddy.
And he may be. He may.
He may be. Look, just like you said, right now it's too early to tell. DJ Chark had 3 catches his rookie season, and then absolutely, balled out his sophomore year. So, everybody's different. It's easy to fall out of love with these guys that we were in love with when you have so many highlights from this same class. So it's easy to forget about those guys at this point. Buy low on them. Throw a dart throw out and see what happens.
100%.
So before we get into this, I want to bring up this question here about Marquis Brown from one of our YouTube subscribers, MathQuest. Marquis Brown burned him and a lot of other fantasy managers in 2020. Started to look well over the last 6 games. How are you guys viewing Marquis Brown going forward? Do you think he's still a viable fantasy asset, whether in redraft or dynasty? Or are you ready to just take whatever you can get for him and move on because you don't see that he can be a true wide receiver 1 in fantasy?
Katie, go ahead.
Okay. I was never that high on Marquis Brown coming out. I am not sure he's wide receiver 1 material. I think he's going to be a decent best ball kind of guy where you're never sure what you're going to get, but I would not want to have to put him in my lineup week in and week out with any kind of faith. But I never had that expectation going in of that guy anyway. He was always overpriced for where, for what I thought he was.
Yeah, he was the first wide receiver off the board, and people, they get hyped up on draft capital. So.
Right. It's just like Henry Ruggs. I wasn't a big believer. I didn't buy into Henry Ruggs. There are certain profiles or guys that you avoid, and he, for me, was always one of those. Now, if somebody wants to get away from him real cheap, I'm a buyer at that price because the price now is different. And I think that as a plug and play matchup, depending on injuries and things, he could be an asset to your fantasy team, but I would not count on him being a wide receiver 1 type guy moving forward.
Angelo?
I agree. I think one of the biggest things is his career arc kind of describes how he plays. It's a
boomer bust.
Slew of good, and then it's a slew of bad. And that's the tough thing about plugging and playing him in your lineups every week is you don't know what you're really going to get. And I don't think he's a true wide receiver 1. I think he's going to be a better real life player than he is in fantasy. With his field stretching capabilities, he's going to get other guys open. But Boykin is the one I would be definitely targeting out of that group of receivers. I think he offers the most upside and the most consistency at the position in the Ravens offense. They don't. And the thing is, they don't pass enough. And that's the biggest issue is they're very much a run first offense. Besides besides Jackson and Dobbins, I mean, there really isn't much else you'll want besides Andrews. And
even then, like he showed his true colors this year.
It's tough, man. I mean, that's a tough offense to get involved with any of the pass catchers. We'll see what they do in the NFL draft this year. A lot of people are mocking some of the top receivers there this year. But yeah, I'm pretty much on kind of sell mode if I can get a good amount for Marquis Brown. But
so in your eyes, what is a good amount?
Oh man, I mean, if someone's willing,
like, I mean, if you have Marquis Brown and you're saying, look, I don't want this headache on my team anymore. What is the lowest value that you are
value? Probably a mid second, a mid second in this year's rookie draft. I mean, that's I think fair value because a lot of people are going to be enamored with the 6-game touchdown streak and the increase in target share and that type of thing. But I'm not super sold on it. I liked Marquis Brown coming out, but this is kind of my fear with him landing in Baltimore is if he landed in Kansas City, we wouldn't be having this conversation probably. And he's not a legitimate wide receiver one, and he plays in an offense that doesn't really need one. And that's the most difficult part about it.
Katie, agree or disagree on the price?
I'm sorry, I was kind of zoning out.
No, you're good. You're good. Angelo said mid-second that he would take for Holly or Marquis Brown. Fair?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
All right, Sean, I see your question. We'll get to that here in a bit. So let's dive into the 2021 quarterbacks. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, talk of the town, comes out, finally says, hey, I'm going pro. Every assumption is that he's going to be the number one pick. I see here that both of you agree who your quarterback 2 is. So, Angelo, I'm going to start with you on this one. Tell me why Justin Fields is your QB2 over someone like Zach Wilson out of BYU.
Oh man, I think honestly, we've seen it. It's the big game poise, exposure. He has all the tools to be a franchise quarterback and to really help you in dynasty leagues. I mean, he's kind of like that Konami code of quarterback, right? That same mantra of he might rush for 400, 500 yards in a season, and that's huge for dynasty owners. So I think he has all the tools to be a really successful NFL quarterback. And then he's going to have the draft capital. I mean, the only thing that's tough is we don't know what's going to happen with the Jets. And that's the difficult part is the direction their franchise is going isn't a good one. And then we were talking about that with Trevor Lawrence, a couple months ago is, man, we thought the Jets were going to be, have that number one pick and Trevor Lawrence was going to be stuck there or Trevor Lawrence might go back to school because of it. Mm-hmm. And Justin Fields is kind of, stuck becoming a New York Jet. And we have to see if they put the talent around him. What kind of capital they can acquire for Darnold or if they keep him there. But I just think Justin Fields is in any other draft class, he would be probably the QB1.
Katie?
Okay. His performance with broken ribs in the Sugar Bowl was nothing other than sweet.
Oh, that was spectacular.
Awesome.
He's so much more than that one spotlight victory. I can't wait to see him in the NFL when his ribs are healed and he can be ribbed for my pleasure. I very much look forward to seeing him with a long, long NFL career. He started off committed to Georgia. And at the time he committed to Georgia, there was Jake Fromm, and I'm drawing a blank on the guy who transferred. He was hurt, and then Fromm took over. He went to, I think, Washington. Help me out, Angelo. What's his name? The quarterback from Georgia that went to Washington.
Jacob
Eason.
Yeah, Jacob Eason. Thank you. So they were both highly touted quarterbacks, and Justin Fields still committed to Georgia because he felt like he could win that quarterback competition. He didn't, but it wasn't because of his skill set. It's because the Georgia coaches like a missionary position type quarterback. They don't want somebody that's going to be in wild sexual positions like Justin Fields, who can do it from anywhere on the field. And he's got great legs. He's got a great arm. He's lit it up at Ohio State. If you watch his the QB1, you get to see a little bit inside of who he is. He's a great guy. And he's very even keel. He doesn't get high. He doesn't get low. But don't make any mistake. He is very competitive. And what you want to see from your quarterback is a guy that's going to raise everybody up and in that fourth quarter, get them to win the game. And I think that Justin Fields is going to do that, not just in the NFL, but for your fantasy team.
Now, Angelo, you mentioned, with the Jets currently having the 102, Sam Darnold being in the picture, there's been, rumors flying around that Joe Douglas, the GM, is likely going to make a big trade, whether that's trading the 102, whether it's potentially moving Sam Darnold. To me, that has to be made before the draft, right?
100%.
Or at least before they make that pick.
Right.
Let me pose it to you this way, because we talk all the time about landing spot, right? Like, people faded AJ Brown because he landed with Tennessee. They faded DeAndre Swift because he landed in Detroit. Those moves kind of backfired. So based on Fields, if he lands with the Jets, are you fading him versus maybe him falling to Atlanta at 4, or maybe one of the other teams in the top making that move? Or is he still, hey, this is my QB2, and it's going to lead right into Sean's question here with the quarterbacks and Superflex?
Oh, I think for me, I'm buying Justin Fields no matter what. But I think the thing is, it's going to give him a buy window with the New York Jets. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. If he lands in Atlanta, there's no buy window. You're throwing to Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. If he lands in New York, he's throwing to Mims, Perriman, and Crowder.
And maybe not even Perriman, because he's only on a one-year contract.
So, I mean, right now, those are his 3 weapons.
Yeah.
And Chris Herndon, who hasn't shown up in a little bit. But
hey, don't you speak ill on Chris Herndon.
Man, I'm a big Chris Herndon fan. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, hopefully he gets away from now he's away from Adam Gase. We might see him shine a little bit. But
hey, we saw Ryan Tannehill shoot up.
That is every single player. Kenyon Drake,
Caleb Balaj.
That was the dude back from the dead. But man, I mean, I'm looking to acquire Justin Fields the minute he goes to the New York Jets. So I think his value will be lower than his talent level. And I think for me, Justin Fields is unequivocally QB2 of the class, no matter what. Love his talent. Like I said before, he'd be the QB1 in most classes. And that means a lot in terms of, his career ceiling and what he can do for your fantasy teams.
Okay. Katie, yay or nay, Fields 102 to the Jets?
Well, I don't know that he's going to go to the Jets. I think he might end up in Houston. I think there's a Deshaun Watson that is very graceful right now that is saying, hey, I want to trade. I want to get out. What would we think if he went to Houston in a trade? What would we think if he went to Atlanta?
I feel better if Hopkins was still there.
Right, obviously. I mean, yeah. My philosophy, and anybody that listens to Under the Helmet knows, I always say that cream rises to the top. They will exceed where their landing spot is. If they're the true talent, there's injuries and things that could happen that could derail all that. He is clearly the QB2 in this class, and I'm not concerned about his landing spot. And as Angelo said, if he does get a shitty landing spot, that just makes a bigger buy opportunity and a longer buy opportunity. So I'm not worried about his talent or his landing spot.
Okay. So I mentioned Lawrence, we mentioned Fields. Katie, give me one of your kind of under the radar guys. Maybe somebody that goes a little bit later in the first, maybe that falls into the second, maybe based on landing spot gets an opportunity that dynasty managers can steal, whether it's in the late first, early second in Superflex, or even in the middle rounds of 1 QB dynasty leagues.
Sure. So I really like Shane Hallam. He does a lot of predicting of NFL draft and where he does a lot of mock drafts and where he thinks that the talent is going to lie. And regardless of what we think of some of these rookies and players, there's still a finite number that are going to go in round 1. There's a finite number that are going to go in round 2. Historically, the average since the year 2000, so a 21-year sample size, 2.86 quarterbacks go in round 1. Right now, Shane Hallam and Tony Pauline, they've got Kyle Trask as somebody that's probably going to be a round 2 quarterback. Round 2 quarterbacks can hit, and they do. There's a much higher percentage that the round 1 guy is going to. But I think that of the round 2 quarterbacks, I look at Kyle Trask as somebody, depending on where he ends up, for him, it's going to be program specific and how they can develop the talents that he does have. I don't think he's a great quarterback, but I think he's a good enough quarterback that, given the right program, like, for example, if he gets drafted by Atlanta in round 2, where he can sit a year behind Matt Ryan, I think that's a system that he could be successful in. He doesn't have the strongest of arm, but he's very accurate and he's got good size. I didn't like to see the way that he was hanging his head during the game when they were losing this weekend. But I think that overall, Kyle Trask is somebody that, with the right landing spot, because he's a more of a round 2 type guy, he could end up a viable super flex type guy.
I like it.
Yeah.
You mentioned Atlanta. I think that's a decent landing spot, because a lot of people are saying that, the Falcons could potentially move on from Matt Ryan. But when you look at the contract situation, it would actually be easier financially for them to move on after 2021. So if they were to draft more of a bridge guy versus taking somebody in round 1, their cap would work out a little bit better. Angelo, give me one of your guys that you're looking at kind of in the later rounds who, could pop off given the right situation.
Right. I think for me, it's going to be probably a mid-late first round guy, and it's Trey Lance. I think coming into the year, he was pretty much the consensus QB3 of this class. And, with COVID happening and him only being able to play one game, he's kind of fallen out of that, QB3 range. I think right now, a lot of people have him consensus QB4 or 5. And I think he offers the best upside outside of guys like Lawrence and Fields. And I think the rushing capabilities he has and his ability as a downfield passer is going to really, be a big point of intrigue for a lot of NFL teams. And I think in the mid-first round, we can kind of look for him to start to go. Honestly, the best landing spot for him to go, being a Bears fan, would actually be Chicago. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think he'll be able to sit a year behind Mitch Trubisky. I never thought I'd say those words, but I think the Bears do bring Mitch back in a 1-year prove it type deal. And then they draft their quarterback of the future potentially this year. And I think he'd be a guy that they can kind of mold into and not rush into the starting role. So, I mean, for me, I think a team like the Bears that has a potential bridge quarterback that he can sit behind a year and learn. I think he could be an absolutely, like I said before, the Konami code type quarterback in fantasy with significant rushing upside.
Yeah, you definitely want the rushing upside, and that's something that Trubisky brings to the table as well with his mobility. I kind of look at Trubisky as the Bears might end up trying to do something similar to what Jacksonville initially did with Bortles, like those shorter term deals, but instead of literally stretching out over the full 3 years and ruining your cap, making it more of a long-term deal, but with short-term outs, right? So you give him that security without the security, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No,
and that allows you to make the move to draft someone like a Trey Lance. So, no, I like it because from what I've gathered with Trey Lance, just again, based off of, on the outside looking in, because I don't dive near as much into this stuff as you guys do, at least until a little bit later in the season. The passing has kind of been the inconsistent part, but the rushing is what you really like to see. Right. And when it comes to fantasy, rushing is king with quarterbacks.
Yeah, look at Jalen Hurts,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Exactly. You don't have
even when he was bad passing this last game, he had 2 rushing touchdowns.
Exactly. And that's the biggest part is, especially around the goal line, that's a huge part, I mean, if you're in 4-point per passing touchdown leagues, especially, I mean, that's the rushing upside there is massive. But yeah, I think, with Trey Lance, I hope he goes somewhere he can sit a year and learn, but I think his upside's massive this year.
We're in a new era and we don't have enough real data points to say one way or the other. But, back in the day when you had Tom Brady and Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger, everybody, for the most part was a pocket passer. And if you could move a little bit, that was great. And they had long careers if they stuck. Right now, we expect so much. Everybody overdrafts quarterbacks in Superflex rookie drafts, in my opinion, because they expect them to be plug and play and that they'll be around for 10, 15, 20 years. I've just locked up my quarterback for the future. That's not necessarily so. Guys like Marcus Mariota, who had all kinds of rushing upside, he's a backup right now. Will he ever get another shot? We don't know. RG3 was awesome out of the gate. But then he got injured, and you're putting yourself at a bigger target. So yeah, you may get some early bang for your buck, but if you're trading the farm for Jalen Hurts right now because of his rushing upside, he may not even be in the league 3 years from now. He may be holding a clipboard more often than he's actually on the field. So I agree to a certain extent that, yes, you want to target rushing, but you also have to have that talent to last. And we don't know yet if rushing quarterbacks are going to be able to have those long careers like a pocket passer would.
Hopefully, I think that's a great segue, Katie, to this question from one of our friends of the show, Sean. He took over an orphan in a dynasty league. And right now, his quarterback situation outside of Mahomes is pretty sketchy. He landed the 102. You mentioned right there that people tend to overdraft rookies in Superflex dynasty drafts. Should he look to someone like Fields or potentially move out of the 102 and stockpile picks to improve the rest of his roster? Katie, I'll start with you.
Sure. When you have a special talent like Justin Fields, absolutely you want to take that. If you can, sure, you're always going to shop the pick, but I don't think that he's a hot potato that you have to get rid of the pick. If you can't get a decent return package, stick and pick Fields, feel good about it. I'm talking about taking guys at the 107 to 203 range that if you've got a guy, a wide receiver that is a top first round talent versus taking a Kyle Trask that's a possibly mid second round pick over a guy that's a first round wide receiver that has the metrics, the breakout age, and everything points up on him. That's what I'm talking about. I wouldn't sacrifice the wide receiver for the quarterback in that particular situation. Guys were taking Daniel Jones over certain players. Now, yes, Daniel Jones came out hot, but look at him now. They fade very quickly. If you sell at the right moment, great. If you're the kind of person that can get an asset and flip it at their highest value, perfect. But we can't always thread that needle. And so you've got to feel good about if this guy ends up tanking very quickly, am I going to be okay with that loss?
Right.
And at the 102, I don't think that Justin Fields would be a loss. I think that he does have that talent, and he's not just a running quarterback. He can throw from the pocket. He's a great passer, and that's different from somebody that's a little bit later where it's more of a speculation.
Angelo?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, if you have the 102, and especially this guy who, Sean has Mahomes. So you're super flex. You want it to be super, good floor, good ceiling. Fields offers both of those. And that's pretty hard to find at the quarterback position. I mean, especially, if you're in a rookie draft, if you don't have that 102, it's gonna be hard to find a guy like that. And I wouldn't trade away that pick. I'd take Justin Fields and feel really good about it.
I dig it. Yeah, because I'm in a similar situation in one of mine. I'm going to have, I think it's like the 101, 102 after they do the lottery. But I've got Mahomes and Kyler, but I don't have a third quarterback. So I'm like, do I stock up with the skill position, or do I box out QB altogether and go with a Lawrence or Fields and just say, all right, I'm good to go, and I'm just going to build everything else? So that's kind of the quandary that I'm dealing with in this particular draft. So
yeah.
All right, let's I see some wide receiver questions popping in, so I'm going to bounce around a little bit, and we're going to touch on wide receivers before we get into the 2021 running back. So obviously we saw how deep the 2020 wide receiver class was. This one, I think there's definitely some talent at the position, maybe not as skilled, so to speak, as guys like, Ruggs, Judy, Lamb, Rager, Jefferson, Ayuk, and then going into the second with like Claypool, Pittman, and Chenault and those guys. So I think the biggest thing is, Angelo, we'll start with you on this one. How many wide receivers do you conceivably think could go in the first round this year based off of needs for other teams, skill of the players, and just knowing the state of the NFL right now, where we're trying to put up points because nobody can stop offenses right now?
Right. I mean, man, for me, I think it's going to go in no order: Chase, Smith, Bateman, Moore, Olave, Marshall, and you might see a couple others pop in there. I know I'm probably missing one other big name, but I mean, for me, man, Waddle as well. You could see
that guy coming off an injury.
Yeah, you could see six. You could see six guys, And for me, when I look at this receiver class, a lot of people are going to have the question. I think we're going to talk about it later, but I'll touch on it a bit now is, what do we do with Devonta Smith versus Jamar Chase, right? And the fun thing is those two guys are in a class of their own when it comes to just elite level productivity over their careers. And if you look at having elite level productivity, like a single game, like over 200 yards, let's say. Last year's class of Lamb, first round picks, Lamb, Jefferson, Judy, Ayuk, and Rager combined for 200-yard games over their respective careers. Devonta Smith has 4. Jamar Chase has 3. They have 7 games combined of over 200 yards in a single game over their respective careers. Both of these guys are can't-miss elite level talents. I don't care about size. I don't care about BMI. I don't care about breakout age. When I watch both of these guys play, these guys are wide receiver ones in an NFL offense, and I feel safe saying that and safe picking them as such in my rookie drafts. The rest of the guys, it's kind of more of a toss-up. You have your kind of floor guys, your safer guys like Rashad Bateman. I think he's going to be a fantastic player in the NFL, but I think he offers more of a floor play than a ceiling play. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle's, he averaged almost 23 yards of reception this year. And if you watch him play, he's hands down the most explosive receiver in this draft class. If he goes to a good environment, imagine I was going to say,
that's saying a lot considering the guy he was on the same team with just won the Heisman Trophy.
Exactly. I think they'll play different roles in the NFL, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Waddle is going to be more of your prototypical field stretcher, but an elite field stretcher. Like if he goes to a team like the Chargers or the Chiefs, we're talking about his rookie stock going up, up, up. A guy like Smith, I think his stock, it's going to fall at all. It's because of his size. And that's the thing is you can get I think him and Jamar Chase are fairly close as prospects. They kind of have them 1A, 1B right now because they both do everything well. They're both high ceiling, high floor prospects to me. And those are pretty rare to find, but you can get a guy like Devonta Smith around probably 106, 107 because of the size. Jamar Chase, if you don't nab him at 103, 104, you're probably not going to get him. And I think for me, I'm trying to take the guy at 106, 107, and potentially if I'm at 103, maybe trade back and acquire some extra capital later in the drafts.
Katie, how many wide receivers do you think are going in the first this year?
I agree that
again, I'm saying the NFL draft, not the rookie.
Right. No, I agree that it's 6. I've got a slightly different. I've got Jamar Chase, and the rest are in no particular order, but Devonta Smith, Rondale Moore, Jalen Waddle, Terrace Marshall, and Rashad Bateman. And I do like Olave as more of a second round NFL, but he's right there behind. This is going to be a historical season as well. If you look back again to the year 2000, there's been 7 wide receivers that were taken in 2004, and then it was followed up with 6 more in 2005. The 6 more first rounders in 2005 were not nearly as successful as the ones that were in the 2004 draft. In 2014, we had 5 in the first round, 7 in the second round, and a lot of those have been very successful. In 2015, 6 in the first round, but not very many hits. So just sheer numbers, we had 6 in the first round last year and 7 in the second round. That's a lot of wide receivers that started off early in their careers already with a good head start over this year's class. So how this year's class ends up shaking out, again, I looked at it might be 6 and 6. It may be 6 in the first round and 6 in the second. And there's plenty of NFL teams that need wide receiver. And there's plenty of NFL teams that right now are millions and millions of dollars over the salary cap. So while there's free agents, guys like Allen Robinson out on the market, and somebody with cash like Jacksonville won't do it because they've already had him, but there are teams that are they're flush with the cap and they've got plenty of money to spend. They will throw their money around on some of the wide receivers that are free agents, but there is still room for a lot of these guys to be successful. But I agree with Angelo to the point of it's very top heavy, and then the rest are kind of boom bust or kind of like last year's class, whereas we just aren't quite sure how they will fit in. For a lot of wide receivers, landing spot is key, because if they don't have a good quarterback or if they don't have the right type of offense, they will take a while before they can flourish. But I think that Jamar Chase is in a category all by himself. Nothing wrong with Smith and everything that he's done. I do like him. But since there's never been a wide receiver like him in the NFL since 1999, he's a totally brand new type of profile. We've never seen a guy like him. So it's very hard to project. If he falls to the 106, 107, absolutely, that's a good price. I just don't think he's going to go there. I think with the Heisman hype, and if he goes very early, top 10, I think he's going to go at the 103, 102, 104, somewhere in there in a non-super flex type league.
Okay.
And that's just too high of a price, in my opinion. When I'd probably either trade the pick or trade back, to be honest, and try to just
that way you don't have to make the decision. Let somebody else die on that sword.
Exactly. But I do love Jamar Chase. I think that size, speed, what he's done. I know he missed this year, but it doesn't matter. We saw what Justin Jefferson. He's better than Justin Jefferson.
I like it. And that was actually going to be my next question, who your wide receiver one is. Katie, you mentioned Chase. Angelo, you have kind of 1A, 1B. You guys mentioned a lot of wide receivers and who could potentially land in the first round there. Angelo, give me one guy that you think is maybe being slept on a little bit, that has some talent, maybe because they sat out this year due to COVID concerns, or maybe just because of poor offensive play in their system, et cetera.
Man, I think Tamarion Terry is that guy for me. I mean, about 6'4", close to 220 pounds. He averaged about almost 18 and a half yards, 18.8 yards per reception for his career. He led college football in 2019 in receptions over 60 yards. And he's a guy who's going to be a big play threat at the next level.
That was with terrible quarterback play.
Terrible. I mean, Florida State was probably, for Power 5 teams, one of the worst environments you could possibly be in for a skill position player. And we saw Cam Akers struggle there at times, and Cam Akers had a great rookie year. So for me, it's definitely Terry. If it wasn't for the injury and him kind of deciding, you know what, I'm not going to risk it the rest of this year, I think he's a top 5 receiver in this class. If not for that, I think he'd sneak into the back end of the first round because of the physical profile. He's going to go to the NFL Combine and he'll probably run mid 4.3s if he's healthy. And that's the crazy part about him is if you watch it, if you say, okay, well, how fast is Tamarion Terry? Terry on the field plays in the NFL career is 23.23 miles an hour. Tamarion Terry ran 23.4 miles an hour at 6'4", 216 pounds. Is Tamarion Terry as fast as Tyreek Hill? No, Tyreek Hill is an Olympic-level sprinter. But is Tamarion Terry the fastest receiver in this draft class? Him and Anthony Schwartz are going to be both up there. I mean, guys that are 6'4", 220 who can run in the 4.3s don't grow on trees. And I think his draft capital –
DK Metcalf.
that is true. You're getting your DK Metcalf style of player, right, from a physical profile. And
so
I think
is Terry the decaf Metcalf that
oh my God.
on the broadcast?
I knew you were going to say that. I don't know, man. I mean, I think they're both different players, too, if you watch them both move. Terry's a little more fluid and balanced than DK Metcalf coming out of college. And it's funny because DK Metcalf literally fell in drafts because of a 3-cone.
I was about to say, if Terry knocks out his 3-cone,
man.
To the moon.
Wheels up. But no, man, I think we're going to see Terry in the NFL draft, probably early mid-second round pick. He's a guy that could jump into the late first round. If he runs, let's say 4.34, weighs in at 220 and about 6'4", jumps about 38 inches in the vertical jump, 10 and a half plus foot broad, has those type of metrics, elite level metrics, NFL teams are going to love to see that and have a guy they can kind of mold.
Would you worry a little that he's a combine warrior at that point?
No, because if you look at his production profile, he has a 1,000-yard season. He averaged over, I think it was 20 yards a catch in that season. If you watch him play, he was extremely dominant besides having bottom tier quarterback and offensive line play. And that's kind of held him back. But I think another point of his success is he played special teams. He was a gunner and a dang good one too. I think NFL teams are going to like that and have a guy.
It adds roster flexibility, especially for younger players that you see that sort of star potential in, or somebody that can be a serviceable starter. If you have the flexibility to play on special teams, you're going to get more reps overall with the team, and that's going to put more eyes on you going forward.
You're going to be on the field. You're going to have a chance to earn snaps, and I think that's a big part of where he's going to be drafted. If he's an early second round pick or even a late first round pick, he's going to see the field immediately, in my opinion. And if that's as a gunner, that's fine. But I mean, if he's stepping on the field day one, I'm happy with that investment in rookie drafts, because you'll probably get him, mid second round in rookie drafts, and judging by the talent pool that's there now. And that's an investment I'm willing to make, especially with his boom potential.
Katie, who are some guys that you think are being slept on?
Well, first, can I ask Angelo, what round in rookie drafts did you think that Terry would go? Like, where would you be buying him?
I think, for me personally, if I'm looking at like historical hit rates in the second round, they're not great. And I'm trying to look for the boom. But for me, mid-second round, similar to where you took Antonio Gibson last year. Similar to that position, I think he goes probably anywhere from, depending on the combine. Pre-combine, I'd say he's probably going to go later, like 2.6, 2.7. Post-combine, if he blows it up, he might go 2.2, 2.1. But I'd probably, if I'm sitting at 2.3, 2.4, I'm pulling the trigger every day of the week.
See, I like Terry, and he's an older prospect. He's 23. He'll be 23 when he makes in his debut.
He's got Terry McLaurin syndrome. Watch out.
Well, no, it's not just that. But with wide receivers, breakout age is a big tell. And he didn't have a big breakout early on. And part of it is he was a 3-star guy. He didn't get it. The reason he was 3-star, he didn't have the best grades in high school. He was working on the farm to support his family. He didn't get to go to the football camp. So he's more of a raw prospect. I love his skills. I love his determination. He's a hardworking guy. I think he's more of a boom bust type guy, though. And I think he's going to be more. Shane Hallam and Tony Pauline both have him going in round 4 of the NFL draft. And if he does, but yet he still has a good combine, I think he's going to be overdrafted in that early second, especially if he gets a good landing spot. I think he's going to be kind of like this year's Miles Boykin. Remember when Boykin flew up the charts and was looking at 103 range in drafts? And that was before. So he's a dangerous guy. If I could get him late second, early third and stash him, I think he's going to take a little bit longer to develop. And at 23, that's not the best chance, is all I'm going to say. I do love the guy, but he's very boom bust. And my guy that I think that is not being talked about enough, and it's because out of sight, out of mind, is Rondale Moore. I think he's going to be one of those guys that does go in round 1 of the NFL. He'll have the pedigree, but based on just his skill set and what he can do and his young breakout age, I think that he is somebody that could thrive and just isn't being talked about enough. And as far as a little bit later, more of a sleeper pick, somebody that I'll be targeting later in drafts, is Amari Rodgers out of Clemson. He was a 5-star guy that was highly drafted in Devy. And then because he didn't have that production early on in his Devy career, he fell off the charts. This year, he had a pretty good year, and he was able to he's got a running back type body, but he's somebody I kind of put him somewhere between Devin Duvernay and Deebo Samuel as far as his profile. And for somebody like that to get him in round 3 or maybe even round 4 of a rookie draft, I would buy that all day.
All right, making my notes now, guys. Okay. I like it. I'm gonna throw this question from Sean here. So he's kind of looking at some waiver wire wide receivers, guys like Zach Pascal, Chris Conley, Braxton Berrios, Miles Boykin, Trent Taylor, Justin Watson, Dede Westbrook, John Ross, all available. Is there any of these guys that you would kind of look to pick up just to stash? Obviously depending on who he's dropping, but is somebody in there kind of stand out? Like, yeah, I'd throw a flyer at him. Katie, go ahead.
Boykin.
Yeah, that's my answer too. I mean,
I lean Boykin too. Just the physical profile. It's like, maybe they move him, maybe they don't. Maybe Jackson finally takes that step forward. Maybe they get a new offensive coordinator. Who knows? But bet on the profile and the talent. So
he was another one that was going to take time, just based on how raw he was. Mm-hmm. And I still think that his best is yet to come if given the chance. So of those guys, that's who I would go with.
I like it. All right, now looking at the 2020 class, where do you think T. Higgins lands? Does he have more to offer in year 2? Because we saw a pretty good profile this year with Burrow, and then even without, he was still seeing some targets and getting some run. So, Angelo.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I mean, I think he definitely has more to offer as that offense grows. They give Burrow more protection, more weapons around him. I think they do take a receiver pretty early this year as well. To kind of complement T. Higgins in his game. I think T. Higgins is the alpha in that offense. And I think he's going to be Joe Burrow's favorite target for years to come. But it's going to really depend on what they do with their offensive line. I mean, that's kind of the question mark in Cincinnati right now is, are they going to be able to protect Joe Burrow? Joe Burrow is an extremely talented quarterback. We've seen that. But lack of protection was a huge problem with them last year. They couldn't run the ball, even though they have Joe Mixon signed him. And it's just going to be, it's going to be one of those things where, hey, can they protect Joe Burrow, let T. Higgins get downfield? But I think for me, man, I think he does offer more in year 2. I think he kind of takes that next step in his career. And I wasn't super high on Higgins coming out because he wasn't a great accelerator. He did great things at the catch point, but he kind of relied on that part of his game, right? But now you've kind of seen a maturation of T. Higgins, and he's turning into more of a complete receiver at the line of scrimmage, which has been awesome to see. But I think he does take that next step in year 2. Katie?
I'm sorry. I'm
T. Higgins, year 2.
Yes, I think he absolutely. Anybody that had AJ Green had a very frustrating year this year. AJ Green is being cycled out as the alpha wide receiver 1 for that team, and T. Higgins is going to be it. Tyler Boyd is a good complementary wide receiver. There's a lot of complementary type wide receivers in this year's draft. If they can get somebody that's more reliable than John Ross as a downfield stretcher. And there's a lot of guys, Schwartz for one, that might be a good fit later on. But I think that Higgins is going to be the wide receiver 1 for that team. And I agree with Angelo.
Love it. Love it. All right. Now moving into the running back class. And we saw how deep the 2020 class was. It could have been even deeper had Naji Harris, Chuba Hubbard, and Travis Etienne declared. So, Katie, that's where I got my note from that this, looks like a decent class because of that added depth from what could have been from this past year. So when I say that, hey, this has the makings of a decent class, maybe not as great as 2020, but there's still some talent here. And I think that Chuba Hubbard's disappointing 2020 season has kind of contributed to that. But Katie, give me your overall RB1, because I think that there's a lot of movement here. Like, some people really like Harris. Some people like, the tools that ETN brings to the table. Devonta Williams is in that category as well. And by the looks of the notes, it looks like both you guys agree here. So, Katie, I'm going to throw it to you first.
Yeah, I like Naji Harris just slightly better than ETN, but they are so close. And outside of that, I'm not necessarily willing to gamble on many of the others. There's going to be a lot of pick your flavor type running back. But I think that because last year's class was so strong, people will fall into the trap of thinking, oh, I need a running back, so therefore I'm going to take this player, somebody that got drafted in round 4 over a wide receiver that was drafted in late round 1. That is not the answer in Dynasty. Do not draft a running back. I say don't try to put a square peg in a round hole. If the board is giving you a wide receiver with the pedigree and the talent, don't try to force a running back. Just trade for a running back when you need to. So I like Naji Harris. He's a big dude. He's very athletic for his size. And I don't think this is a knock against him at all, because at running back, it doesn't matter as much as wide receiver, but he is on the older side. If he was 21, everybody would have him as the as the hands down RB1, no questions asked. He would be being compared to Barkley and Ezekiel Elliott and all of that. 23 running backs' lives in the NFL are a lot shorter, trying to get that second contract, trying to get paid. But if you get 4 or 5 good years out of the dude, he's more than paid for the spot that you're going to be getting him at. And he's very close. It's almost like a 1A, 1B situation for me. I like ETN. He's got a different skill set, but I would say Harris is the RB1.
Angelo?
Yeah, man, I agree a bit. I think for me, it's Naji Harris. And I think there's a big tier break. Because for me, from a holistic perspective, Harris is the most complete back that we've seen in a few years, from what he can do as a runner and what he can do as a receiver and what he can do with the ball in his hands. I mean, he's the best athlete at the position, given his size. He's 235 pounds and can move the way he does. And, you know, for me being in the human movement space, I go from like a mover first perspective. You know, who's the best mover at the position? And that's Naji Harris. I think he's a very unique running back prospect in that you can split him out wide, put him in the slot. He can win at the catch point. He's a great receiver in the red zone. And so he can do a lot of things that NFL offenses want to do in the modern day. And that's a big deal for me. Is I think he's an early second round pick. I think with a good combine, he can move up into the late first round potentially, but he offers a different skill set than Travis Etienne does. And that's, I think, what people are kind of looking at is people kind of, you know, it's kind of like pick your flavor. You know, some people like the big play, the flashier, that type of running back. But my fear with Etienne is he hangs his hat in one singular skill, and that's his success in early acceleration. And a lot of times when the athletes hang their hat on one singular skill, their other skills don't develop as quickly. He's an okay receiver. He's potentially just a pass catcher at the position. Doesn't catch the ball cleanly. Has improved a lot this year though, which has been great for his stock. I think that was the big knock of him coming out last year potentially was, is he a good enough receiver? He didn't seem comfortable catching the ball. But now he is. And I think he's way more comfortable in that regard. But I don't think he is a natural receiver at the position. I think his route tree is going to be, you know, less advanced than you'd like it. I think it's more on flare routes, potential quick outs against linebackers, get a mismatch, but nothing like Naji Harris or even Kenneth Gainwell, who are the two best receivers in this class at the position at running back. But I think for me, it's pick your poison really. But I think if you're picking in the early first round, you want to hit. You want to hit on the player. You want the better floor prospect who offers a high ceiling as well. And to me, that's Naji Harris.
All right. So I'm going to pose this question here from Dave, who runs Fantasy Go, because we're talking about Naji Harris. Obviously, you guys have given your thoughts. Maybe landing spot plays into this. Maybe it doesn't. Where would you see his ADP? We'll start with rookie drafts and Dynasty, and then we can move into Dynasty startups and things like that. But where's kind of, your eyeball saying, all right, this is where he fits among rookies. Obviously, you have him as your RB1, so I'm assuming he's going to be probably top 5 in Superflex, top 2 and 1 QB. Yay, nay?
Yeah.
Katie, start with you.
Yeah, I would say that's the case, and it's going to depend on how your league mates value Travis Etienne. Just because I think that Harris is over Etienne, as Angelo has said, it's going to be pick your poison, and some people will like his profile a little bit better, and it depends on who they listen to in the Dynasty community as well. There's a lot of voices, and it's pretty split out there, but top 5 for sure. If it's Superflex, I wouldn't see him falling outside of the top 7. And in start 1 quarterback, I can't see him falling outside of the top 4.
Okay. Angelo?
Yeah, I think in Superflex, you're kind of looking at him around 3 to 5. I think outside of Lawrence and Fields, I think he's the safest option. Him and Chase and then Smith. But yeah, I mean, in start 1 quarterback, I mean, he's potentially your 102, 103. But he's the safest. He's the safest out of all the skill position players besides quarterback, in my opinion. And I think he's the least landing spot dependent. him and Chase in that regard. But if we're also talking about ADP potentially next year, I think it's gonna honestly. I think he's gonna be a mid-late first round pick. I think he has a rookie of the year potential. I see him with an all pro caliber ceiling. I mean, he reminds me a lot of former Chicago Bear Matt Forte. I think that's the type of player you're getting in this kind of holistic skill set in terms of style. And he's the most skilled mover in this class at his size. I mean, at 6'2", 235, 235-pound guys don't line up in the slot. And that's a unique part of his game. I think that's going to get magnified at the NFL level, and offensive coordinators are going to be wanting to use it. So I think he's a guy that for sure, if we're looking at, we're on the clock at 104 in a super flex league and it's, Zach Wilson's gone, Lawrence and Fields are gone. He's the guy I'm looking to go after.
All right, give me your ideal landing spot for the top 3 guys: Naji Harris, Travis Etienne, Javonte Williams.
Okay. Let's go Etienne first. I think San Francisco. Okay. I think a wide zone scheme fits him best, and I think he's going to be the guy that needs fit the most because of his capabilities in early acceleration. He's going to be a guy that needs a really good environment around him to get the most out of him. And then if we're talking about Naji Harris, Pittsburgh, they suffered greatly from, the injuries of James Conner and, Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell and, Anthony McFarland are fine role players, but those aren't your, 3-down bell cow type guys. And in Tomlin's tenure, we saw Le'Veon Bell, we saw James Conner, and he likes those guys to stay on the field for all 3 downs. And the commonality between Bell and Conner is they're great in pass protection. And that's the same with Naji Harris. I think he is the best pass protecting back in this class. If you watch him on field, especially in all 22s, it's pretty cool to see him communicating with Mac Jones and calling out blitzers and things of that nature. I think that's a big part of his game that kind of goes overlooked. But that's Pittsburgh for me. And for Javonte Williams, man, I mean, he's a fun player. I think Atlanta would be cool for him. I think that they have a big gap at running back. Todd Gurley, he's kind of being pushed out of the league.
It's amazing how
it's pretty unreal
high he was and how fast.
I mean, that's what injuries can do. I mean, honestly, the mental makeup is still there, but you watched him this year. He was the most touchdown dependent back in the NFL, in fantasy. But I think Atlanta would be a really good spot for Williams as well as I think Buffalo. I think Buffalo would be a really intriguing spot for him because Devin Singletary, I don't think he's going to be anything more than a 5-6 touch per game guy. Zach Moss is okay, but they don't have that guy they can take the workload off of Allen in the red zone. And that's a big part of, Allen's longevity as their franchise quarterback is taking the pressure off of him, in the green and red zone. And I think he could do that for him. And I think I think it was Ray GQ compared him to Marion the Barbarian. Yeah. And I think that was a perfect comparison to the way he plays. I mean, man, he's a run through a wall, hitch in the mouth type of running back, who has a good enough, skill set at top end speed that, to separate away from defense if he gets in the open field. So I think Buffalo and Atlanta be the ones I'd like to see. I would love to see Buffalo, but Atlanta be good as well.
Katie?
All right. I agree that Etienne needs more of the perfect landing spot, but I think that anybody that's got a rushing type quarterback could open up spots for him. So like Arizona, I like San Francisco. Both of those would be good landing spots. I also like Harris to Pittsburgh. They're losing Connor. That would be a good fit. But I think that Williams more in Tampa Bay, I think as the number 2, have him and Ronald Jones kind of working that backfield together would be a nice fit for him. And
Keyshawn Vaughn truthers just shit their pants.
Well,
I was just thinking that. Yeah, that's a
answer. He never was. Miami needs a running back, so that might be decent as well. And if Tua, and I think that Tua really is the answer long term. I think a lot of people that are over the knee jerk reaction, overreacting to, the starts that he had once he gets comfortable. But I think that Williams or Harris in Miami would be good as well.
Yeah, I like that you said Williams to Miami. Just based off of their usage with two guys that were drafted in the 7th round, they want a 3-down bell cow. They don't want somebody that's only going to be on the field for the first 2 downs, move to a 3rd down back. Like, they want somebody that can handle 80+% of the snaps week in and week out. And I think Williams and or Harris can definitely be those guys. So, seeing with how much draft capital they have, maybe they could decide with that 2nd first-round pick to take a running back or do it, early in the 2nd. So it's nice that you brought that up. So
I don't know that either one. I don't know that Harris or ETN will go in the 1st round. If they do, it will be late. So I think their best opportunity would be early in that 2nd round to a team that needs a running back.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to pose this one from Sean, because in my next little segment here, other running backs that you guys think could pop and shine based on landing spot, you both mentioned Trey Sermon. So how do you think his game will translate to the NFL, and what kind of situation do you think would be best for his talents? And Katie, I'll start with you.
He's a hard guy to peg. I like him, but I don't love him. There isn't any one part of his game that I can point to and say, man, he's great at that. And I hear a lot of other Devy and Dynasty analysts and people say that same thing. So I'm echoing not just my own thoughts, but what I've heard as well. And I can't even tell you where I think would be a great landing spot for him. I think that if he goes to like Seattle later,
okay,
he could end up as a decent. They're more of a committee, I think. I don't know that he'll be anything more than a committee, but I think that given the right situation, he could still be fantasy relevant.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, I think he's a good downhill runner. He's an energy giver. He's going to be a guy that I think would fit really well in Philadelphia. Honestly, I don't think Miles Sanders is going to be the 3-down back we want him to be. I don't think he offers the durability we want him to, and I don't think he's improved as a pass catcher as much as we'd like him to as well. So I think giving him a lesser workload and having a guy like Trey Sermon carry, like a 60-40 split with him, Sanders being the 60, Sermon carrying the 40, I think could work nicely in Philadelphia as sort of that 1-2 punch with potentially Jalen Hurts at the helm. Miles Sanders owners are not gonna like that, but I think Sanders is a really
You're killing my soul here.
I know, but it's one of those things where if you look at Sanders and how he's trending and what he's done well in his NFL career, I think he's an explosive player. I don't think he's improved as much as we'd like him to, especially as a pass catcher. And I think he does need another back in that backfield that can handle a workload. It's not going to be a Boston Scott. So I think that'd be a great fit, or somewhere else where he can kind of be take a backseat to another lead guy in like a 60-40, 70-30 type split.
All right. So Angelo, you've got Gainwell, Stevenson, and Carter to go along with Sermon. Give me a little bit on each of these guys in terms of why you think they could help enhance the overall prospects of this RB class.
Right. I think Gainwell's probably the most intriguing one from a PPR perspective because of his abilities as a pass catcher. I think
Memphis just churning them out lately, aren't they?
Oh, for sure. I mean, they are. I mean, man, Henderson. Oh, man, you have a list: Henderson, Pollard, Gibson. I mean, and then you have Gainwell, man. I mean, I think Gainwell's the best receiver.
The new RBU.
I know, right? It's crazy thinking of that school being, such an RB heavy university. But
Bama's on the phone with me right now, guys.
I know, right? They're gonna try to steal him away. But man, I like Gainwell a lot in PPR. He's gonna be a guy that if he goes to the right environment, that likes to use, the running back as a receiver, I think he's going to be one that stocks and go way, way up. I think he's offers capabilities as a runner, but not more than, 6 to 10 touches a game as a runner. But I think his abilities as a receiver to play in the slot too, that's going to be really big because we're seeing those positionless playmakers become a big, big deal in the NFL now with like Deebo Samuel, Curtis Samuel, Laviska Shenault Jr. Those are guys that can touch the ball in both arenas and succeed. And then we talk about Ramondre Stevenson. He's the guy I think that can improve his stock the most. I think we saw that, 186-yard bowl game he had, and the capabilities he has as a runner at 240 plus pounds. He's almost 250. He's 247. And that's the type of thing I think NFL offenses are going to like. They're going to like his abilities as an athlete at 250, basically. And I think that's going to be something that we see at the Senior Bowl and during the Combine to kind of keep our eye on. And then we talk about Michael Carter. I think he's kind of the afterthought of this class. I mean, his obviously backfield mate, Devonta Williams, is the one.
I just saw both of them shred the hell out of my Miami Hurricanes, and I'm just like, where the hell did that come from?
Crazy. Carter's interesting, man. He's kind of in that, like Phillip Lindsay, like Austin Eckler type vein, where they're just really good laterally, great cognitive skill set with both of them. They understand the game, understand leverage, understand how to win one-on-one engagements. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a great committee back. I don't think he'll be a lead guy, but I think he can be the lead back in a committee. I mean, people forget that. Dude, Phillip Lindsay has 2,000-yard seasons. Like, Phillip Lindsay is a pretty good back. And guys like that have a role in the NFL and on your fantasy teams, and he's going to be a guy you can probably get in the mid-late third round or even fourth round of your rookie drafts. He's a guy that could definitely pay off.
Katie, you've got a couple guys on here, Jamar Jefferson, Zamir White. The one I'm most interested in because, again, 2,000 yards in 2019, decides to come back. What the hell happened with Chuba Hubbard this year, and why he's like just kind of really fallen off the radar in a way?
He really has, and I don't know. I don't watch a lot of Oklahoma State, and I still have to dive into my tape study in the off season now that the pro season is winding down. I talk to whenever I travel a lot for work. I haven't been traveling much since March, but anytime that I'm out and about and in a different area, I ran into an Oklahoma State fan. I think that it was at a grocery store. And I asked him, I was like, so what happened with Chuba Hubbard this year? And he was like, man, I can't even tell you, but he just looks bad. But for somebody like him, the reason why I still think, this year's class is weak. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. There's 3 guys. And after that, there's a lot of question marks. And I think that people are going to overdraft based on landing spots. So if that
happens every year, though, doesn't it? I mean,
what's that?
I said that happens every year, though, doesn't it?
Well, it does.
We get enamored with, they could fit so well here, and they're going to pop. And I mean, look at CEH. Like, he had a couple really good games, but he definitely didn't deliver the way many thought he would.
Right, but look at 2014, for example, when they had such a strong wide receiver class, and then you had guys like Bishop Sankey, Jeremy Hill, Carlos Hyde. They all got overdrafted, and I don't think that any one of them are still viable, right?
I mean, Bishop Sankey got overdrafted in the real NFL draft, so.
And again, I don't disagree with that, but I think that can happen when you have a weak class, especially when you have a deeper class. Sometimes I need that running back, and you'll take a 4th round NFL running back over a day, a round 2 wide receiver that has better metrics, better talent, just because. Do not draft for need, trade for need. So I'm out. I like Chuba Hubbard as far as being a 2-way, both rush and receiving, but he's got elite speed. And if he were to fall to that late second, I'd take a shot on him there. I wouldn't take him if he ends up in a great landing spot and he's, early second round. I think there's still too many targets depending on how everything pans out. Jamar Jefferson, same thing. He's a 2-way type guy. I like those type of guys that can produce both on the ground as well as receiving. He's got some pretty good chops. Zamir White, I've loved him. I love Georgia running backs. You want to talk about running back factories. First I was a girly girl, and then I was a chubby girl, and then I was a Swift. Then I was a Swift girl, and now I'm a white.
Oh, yeah, it's Swifty girl. Come on, stick with it, Katie.
So I really like Zamir White. He's had injuries, but he looks good, and he's a mover. He's a big dude, and he's somebody that I haven't given up on. I won't give up on. But if he ends up moving up to that end of the first round, that's too high. Again, it's all about price. So there's guys that I like, but it's gonna end up depending on where they start going in rookie drafts. And I would rather trade the pick for somebody that struggled in year one of the 2020 class, somebody like AJ Dillon. If you've got a late first and Chuba Hubbard is being overhyped, trade that pick for AJ Dillon straight up.
Those quads, man, they're mesmerizing.
They are. Baby's got back. I like that thick ass. People that listen under the helmet, that's one of my – I love running backs that have that thick steak ass. And A.J. Dillon is – and so is Zamir White.
Is that a new metric we're kind of hearing?
Well, it's not new. It's not new. I've been seeing this for years.
Is that going to be a new staple in the Dynasty community?
Well, I'm getting it out more now that I'm on other shows more regularly. I am getting the word out. But yeah, that's a Debbie term that I like to. That's one of my scouting. That's one of my scouting terms for running backs in the Debbie. You know, they got to have a steak ass as a freshman.
Oh my God. That might be the best metric I have ever heard in my life. I love the production stuff with data, but that term is golden. You need to like copyright that and trademark it and whatever you do. I mean, that's fantastic. You got it. Oh man, that's just great. That's golden.
Love it. That totally just completely threw me off of the next segue. But that's fine. We're
I don't even know where I am right now. This is unbelievable.
Well, we hit on all right, so we've hit on the top three positions.
Drinking. I feel like I need to smoke a cigarette or something.
I love it. It's 10 a.m. This is great. This is fantastic.
Oh, this is great. Okay. So we talked about how trash the 2020 tight end class was. This one obviously is light years ahead of that. I mean, I think we could rival back to 2017 when there were 3 tight ends that went in the first round. Kyle Pitts seems to be a top 10 NFL draft talent. I've seen some people on Dynasty Twitter talk about how Kyle Pitts could be the 101 in 1 QB Dynasty drafts. He's that good. I've seen some people say if he were a wide receiver, he'd be the wide receiver 2 in this class. I don't know very many people that don't have Kyle Pitts as the tight end 1. So, Katie, I'm going to start with you. Who's your tight end 2 in this class? And do they have a thick steak ass?
So with tight end, there's a different metric. With running back, it's the steak ass. For tight ends, they've got to be big enough to be able to learn how to block at the NFL level because they are a lineman, let's face it. And in order to stay on the field, you want to get snaps. So with the tight end position, they've got to be able to block. Yes, I love the receiving type, but I think that Kyle Pitts can do that. He can block as well as he can move and play different positions as well. You know, just be off the line as well as the actual true tight end. For me, I've got a 1A, 1B. I like both Brevin Jordan, but Freiermuth, I've got him slightly higher. And I do think they're going to go more like round 2. I think we're only going to see the 1 in round 1. As good as these guys are, unless they get overdrafted. And I go back, Shane Hallam has a pretty good track record of his mock drafts, and so does Tony Pauline. I do look at others, but right now they've got him penciled in, both of these guys, as kind of mid round 2 type guys, which is still great for tight ends. And I still think that those 3 guys are going to be the first 3 off the board, especially if you've got tight end premium.
Right.
Angelo?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Pitts is kind of, the undisputed 101 of the tight end class.
Champion of the world!
Yep. Brevin Jordan is one, though. I mean, I think he can move up into first-round conversation if we're talking about in the late 20s, early 30s with a good combine, with how athletic he is and the skill set he offers after the catch. I think NFL teams really going to like that. With him, the only kind of question mark is the injuries. If he checks out medically, that's going to be a big deal with the amount of shoulder injuries he's had, and I think for him, he is probably going to be an early to mid second round pick, similar to where we saw Cole Kmet go in last year's draft, the Bears. But I think Jordan offers a ton of fantasy upside because of his abilities after the catch, abilities to play in the slot. I think he can play in line, but I think he can also produce as a traditional slot receiver as well in that big slot role.
Look, that's music to my ears. I've mentioned I'm a Hurricanes fan. Brevin Jordan, he has my heart. I love that man. I'm all about Miami Hurricanes and their tight ends because they've got a long history of producing NFL quality tight ends. All right, so let's dive a little bit deeper. We know the breakout rates are a little bit longer with the tight end position. It sometimes takes 2, 3, sometimes even 4 years to really get that tight end one production. And sometimes I don't think draft capital matters as much with the tight end position as it does with running back and wide receiver. I mean, we've seen guys like Travis Kelce, who I believe was a 5th round pick. That, obviously he's been the king of the position for the last 6 years probably. So who are some guys that you're looking at maybe a little bit later that dynasty managers could steal in the 3rd round, 4th round, or even 5th round if their drafts go that long? Katie, we'll start with you.
All right, I'm going to go with the long play since it takes a long time for tight ends to develop. I'm going to go with a guy that is long in both body size and name, Hunter Long out of Boston College. Very good producer in college. I think he's a good receiver. I think he's underrated, and I think he's going to go later in the NFL drafts. But once he develops, I think he could be that kind of guy that you're glad that you drafted and hung on to.
Angelo, I know your guy was somebody that Katie touched on. Talk a little bit more about Freiermuth.
Yeah, man. I think 2 of them are. Freiermuth might go a little higher though. I think Freiermuth's going to be a 2nd round pick in the NFL draft. And he's going to be probably a hotter name after the combine. I think he's going to test pretty well too at his size. With the injury though, that's the thing I don't know. If he is going to test and what he's going to do with the completion of his testing. Is he going to do the 40s? Is he going to do the broad jump, that type of thing? But another one is Iowa State's Charlie Colar. I think he's one as well that for me, in that bigger tight end mold, like 6'6", probably weighing around 255, 260. Tall guy, long arms, good pass catcher. And I think he's going to be a red zone threat in the NFL. And he's a guy that I would, if you're tight end needy and he goes to a spot where, that needs a tight end, he could be a producer in the next couple of years.
I like it. So I'm going to revisit one of Sean's questions from earlier when he's talking about a tight end premium PPR Superflex. Again, Dynasty Orphan that he took over. He has Will Dissly, Blake Jarwin, Darren Fells kind of on the back end of his roster. Guys like Jack Doyle, Trey Burton, Anthony Ferkser, Caden Smith, Dalton Keene, Foster Moreau, all available. Again, this is tight end premium. Would you prefer any one of those free agents over Dissly, Jarwin, or Fells? Katie, I'll start with you.
Boy, there's a bunch of crap.
Hey, just remember Foster Moreau had 5 touchdowns in 2019.
Yeah, I was going to say either Trey Burton or Foster Moreau, and I'd keep Dissly and Jarwin, but I think Fells is more droppable. It's a Yahtzee play. You shake them up. You shake them up and you roll them out, and you hope you roll a 6. There's not a lot to get excited about there.
Same. Yeah, Jarwin, I think, is the one name that Dissly too, even with the injuries, I think he's a good player, but I don't think any of those guys are moving the needle.
No, I agree. I like Moreau just, from
the upside
red zone. Yeah, from a red zone upside perspective. I mean, I can't imagine that Jason Witten's going to be there much longer. Dalton Keene being a, Patriots tight end, I think people have that sort of, stigma in their head that, they were great with Gronk and Hernandez, so they're going to be great with Asiasi and Keene. And I mean, granted, they had piss.
No, they're going to either draft or trade for a tight end. Hunter Henry is a free agent this year, and Belichick had a long conversation with him. That would be an awesome fit. I love
great fit.
Hunter Henry is a Razorback.
He is, yeah.
So woo pick. So my first time getting to tout my favorite college team.
Right.
But one of the phrases that we use on guys like Jason Witten, he's circling the drain. So it's inevitable. He doesn't have much time left in his NFL life, and I do like Foster Moreau. But
he's still a tight end too. I mean, when you got somebody like Darren Waller there in front of him, it's like how much run is he really going to get?
And as Angelo said, he's not going to move the needle. Now, if there's an injury, I think he's the kind of guy that could step up and you could plug him in and feel pretty good about it compared to some of the others that are that are there.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Doyle's injury history, I think, makes Burton at least serviceable in that aspect.
Right.
Caden Smith, I think, is probably, it feels like one drop away from taking over the Giants' tight end position.
Not wrong.
And we've seen big games from Anthony Ferkser as well. Taylor Lewan's ACL injury, Jonnu was, kept inside the block, and Ferkser has big games. So, again, like you guys said, not a ton to move the needle, but definitely opportunity if one domino falls. So there's that. But definitely Fells, not it. We can speak on that. So before we close out the show, which, wow, what a lot of information. Holy crap. You two are absolutely fantastic. And I feel so much more knowledgeable having gotten to sit in this chair and talk with you two.
You've learned a few new phrases too. A few new terms.
Screenshots. Hey, it's up on YouTube to live forever. So there's that. So as we head into super wild card weekend, as they're dubbing it, because there's 2 extra games versus every other NFL season. Give us your picks. Colts at Bills, Rams at Seahawks, Bucks at Washington. Angelo, I'm going to start with you. Who you got, Colts or Bills?
Bills. I'm going to go
Katie.
Bills, 100.
Oh, okay. See, I've got the Colts going to the AFC Championship game, so I'm going to be the odd one out here.
Okay.
I'm going to take
on the back of Jonathan Taylor. I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Bills can't stop the run. You kidding me? Rams at Seahawks. Katie.
Seahawks.
Angelo.
Seahawks, but I mean it's going to be tough. I mean, DK Metcalf has Jalen Ramsey on him. I mean, Aaron Donald's going to be in Russell Wilson's face. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think Seahawks.
Need I remind you that the Rams are trotting out AAF legend John Wolford as their starting quarterback?
I love watching Wolford play. It's fun to watch. I mean, come on.
I too am going with the Seahawks.
Come on, yeah.
All right, Katie. Bucks at Washington.
I am going with TB12 and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, right? I mean, it's a rite of passage. Tom Brady getting past the first round of the playoffs. So I mean, I think.
Well, to be fair, I think this is the first time he's actually been in the wild card round.
That's actually a good point. I think
he doesn't know how to play in this round.
With Washington, his head's spinning. I bet. With Washington's injuries, I mean, I think the Buccaneers win it pretty easily.
Washington only won the NFC East because they were the best of the least.
100%.
And let's face it, it should be a rout. That should be the biggest rout.
That should be, for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bucks too. I think Alex Smith right now is trending to not play.
I'd be surprised if he did.
And Taylor Hanke ain't all that.
Where's Dwayne Haskins, by the way? I thought that he wasn't here.
He's visiting with Carolina right now. I'm sure they have some pretty good strip clubs there. He'll follow.
Yeah.
God. Dwayne Haskins. That'll make your soul hurt. That's a bad one.
Right? All right. And real quick, I'm going to get your guys' opinions on Sunday's games. Baltimore at Tennessee. Katie.
Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to go Tennessee on this one. Lamar really needs to get that win, but
Tennessee's a good team, man. Tennessee's a good team.
I'm going to have to bring out the Benjamins.
Reality, they're both good teams, and Tennessee has a very.
If he wants to win, he's got to bring out the Benjamins, and he doesn't. No.
Yeah, Chicago at New Orleans. Katie.
I think Chicago.
Oh.
I love it.
That brings a smile to your face.
I did. As a lifelong Bears fan, I would love to see it. I don't think their offensive line is good enough to go up against Cam Jordan and company and Demario Davis and win. Dave Montgomery's been the engine of that offense for the second half of the season and has proven himself as a top 10 back in this league. But I don't know if they have the offensive line to give him the lanes he needs to succeed. Mitch Trubisky, is Mitch Trubisky at this point, right? I don't think he's going to be able to create much on his own. As much as I'd love to see the Bears win, as a Bears fan, I think it's going to be New Orleans by 14. So, I don't think it's going to be all that close, but I'd love to see it. It'd be fantastic. Thank you, Katie, for making my day. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
hey, I'm going Bears with the upset because Drew Brees sucks in the playoffs the last 5 years.
True.
He's been terrible,
and they just won't use Alvin Kamara. They'll do the Latavius Murray. He's going to get an ungodly amount of snaps for some some reason, and then Kamara won't see the field, and then you look up in the scoreboard, it's 21-17. It's pretty close.
And just remember, they're calling this game on Nickelodeon for the kids.
I saw that, and I was like, so you know, like when you live in Chicago, like they send you like the show sheet when if you're watching, you know, whatever, blah blah. And I was watching, my wife was watching the news, and I'm like, the Bears game's on Nickelodeon. That's a thing. Nate Burleson's. I love Nate Burleson.
I just want to see somebody score a touchdown and then get slimed.
Yes, I do.
That's all I want to see.
That's all. That'd be great. I mean, that's just
because then the adults actually watching the game would have nostalgic flashbacks.
I would actually watch that on Nickelodeon just for Nate Burleson. I mean, I love Nate Burleson. So I mean,
he's fantastic.
He is. So that's funny. But
and then the last game, Cleveland at Pittsburgh. These guys literally played last week. Stefanski not calling the plays, out because of COVID. Do we see an upset, or is Pittsburgh winning this game? Angelo.
Pittsburgh. I mean, that's going to be an ugly game, I think.
I agree.
That's going to be an ugly game. I mean, if there's a game in the playoffs that's going to be 7-9, it's going to be that game. But man, I think it's going to be Pittsburgh. I mean, Big Ben, like he said, he's circling the drain. You know, Johnson struggling with drops. Claypool's still learning. Juju's been okay. James Conner can't do it.
Juju talked a lot of shit going into this game.
Oh my god, I love Juju.
Not even learned with all the dancing on the logos and stuff, but apparently not.
But Steelers for me for sure.
Katie,
I'm not as sure, but I think the Steelers will win.
Yeah.
I think the Steelers win too. I can't see Cleveland with literally one practice this entire week because of the COVID issues being able to come into their first playoff game in 18 years and win this game without their head coach, mind you.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't. I think it will be close, even though it probably should be a blowout. But the Steelers' offense right now just looks so discombobulated that they don't give me a ton of confidence. So and let's remember too, Cleveland had trouble beating a backup quarterback last week against them.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think at the end of the day, talent wins out. And right now, Pittsburgh just has more of it than Cleveland. So,
agreed.
Angelo, Katie, thank you two so very much for coming on, talking about all these prospects. Seriously, I'm going to throw this one up from Sean. He's been playing Dynasty for 7 days and this has been so informative. And I will echo that, except for the 7 days part. So very informative. And thank you guys so very much. Absolutely. And thank you, everybody that's tuned in. Angelo, Katie, we'll definitely look to have you guys back throughout the offseason to talk more prospects, talk more Dynasty. I am absolutely looking forward to it. Now I'm going to try and replicate Joe's outro that I know I'm going to fumble and screw up. But next Wednesday, we're doing, again, our no pun intended show, 7 o'clock Eastern. You can find us here on YouTube, Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, not Instagram because their API sucks. But Twitch, we'll be on Twitch. We're bringing back one of our contributors, Chris Molina. We're holding ourselves accountable for our running back takes this year and going over our projections and such. Hopefully we will have our DFS show on the following Friday. We had a little bit of a hiccup last night and weren't able to get that off, but hopefully again we'll be back at it with that. And we got some plans going forward with Club Dynasty, talking with a couple other personalities to come on with us throughout the summer. I'll be hosting that one with Joe or not without Joe, excuse me. See, Joe, you're right. I was going to F it up as I always do. So for Angelo at Angelo_fantasy, for Katie at FF_Kyler399, the diva of Devon. Skylar. See, I'm screwing everything up. This is what I do. Real quick, guys, before I actually sign us off, Angelo, tell everybody where they can find you and your work. And Katie, I'll have you do the same.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I mean, first of all, thanks for having me on again. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Angelo_fantasy, and then you could find a lot of my work as well on angeloanalysis.com. I'll be diving into the rookie profiles pretty soon here, getting them all wrapped up. And then, probably in the next month or so, those will be kind of popping out. I think the first one will be Naji Harris, but I'm excited to get those out and have another fun draft season.
Katie?
Thank you, Josh, for having me on. This has been fantastic. It's been great to meet you, Angelo. I'm a fan of your work. People that aren't subscribing, he does excellent analysis and looks at it from a different perspective. So AngeloAnalysis.com. Check him out because he's got some previews up there and you're going to want to subscribe. I am at FF_Skylar399 on Twitter, and I am the diva of Devi. You can find me on Under the Helmet podcast every week. I'm also on Off the Rails podcast. That's mostly a weekly thing, but if you follow me on Twitter, you'll see me post and retweet those kind of things. And to Sean, welcome to Dynasty. It is addicting. You're going to love it. I would highly recommend, if you like college football, that you also experiment, dip your toes into the Devi water sooner rather than later. It is a great, great change and twist, and it offers just a whole new level to Dynasty. But thank you again, Josh. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. And again, I'm Josh. You can find me at the One Hudsonian. My co-host Ryan at the Fantasy 5. That's 5 spelled out. My other co-host Joe at Joe_Zolo. You can find us at Club Fantasy FFL, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we now have a custom YouTube URL, youtube.com/Club Fantasy FFL. The website, www.clubfantasyffl.com. And always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy. We'll see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy playoff weekend. Kudos to your teams if you made it. If not, guess what? We're preparing for the draft like everybody else. Take care. Enjoy your weekend, folks.